A friend of mine, Dr. Matthews. He had a patient once who couldn't even remember her own name. Suddenly she couldn't remember where she was going or why or anything.
Stop the car!
You're traveling to another dimension. Your next stop, the Twilight Zone.
Season 4 of Twilight Zone has always been an anomaly, and with the premiere episodes such as In His Image, which, let's just say, swings for the fences, it's no surprise that among fans, this season went on to become somewhat polarizing. The most common critique of Season 4 is the 1-hour format, a departure from the more popular half-hour episodes. But to be fair, there are others who are just unfamiliar with the 4th season. These longer episodes didn't typically air during marathons. In fact, when Netflix was streaming the show, Season 4 was excluded. That's actually still the case on some streaming platforms. Another reason I suggest Blu-rays.
Right?
Right.
Aside from the longer runtime, the show underwent other changes. The Twilight Zone simply became Twilight Zone, and we got the infamous floating door and shadowed window imagery, which is actually my favorite. But most notably at this point in the show's run, the series creator Rod Serling was feeling burned out. With that, Serling stepped back and focused on teaching at his alma mater, Antioch College. Although he continued to contribute scripts and still appeared as narrator, his presence was a little less prominent. Despite all the changes and criticisms, Season 4 still features classic episodes such as On Thursday We Leave for Home and Death Ship. But the question is, where does In His Image stand in the mix? Well, let's find out. In His Image was episode 1 of Season 4, it was directed by Perry Lafferty, and it was written by Charles Beaumont. In His Image has one of the most violent and shocking openings in the entire series. While waiting in a subway station, our lead, Alan Talbot, as portrayed by George Grizzard, finds himself on the receiving end of a religious tirade courtesy of a subway rider played by Catherine Squire.
Read it. It'll change your life. Oh, the devil means to have you, mister, but I won't let him.
Soon, Alan begins hearing strange, almost otherworldly noises. Shortly thereafter, he shoves the woman in front of an oncoming train. Alan then flees the scene of the crime, and we're left to wonder if we accidentally just tuned into a horror movie. Now, I have to interject here. Being a New Yorker who has taken the train for too many years, I've witnessed tons of insane situations. Sadly, there's been many reported instances of people being shoved onto train tracks. So, this is a scenario that strikes a nerve. This grim setup, brimming with religious overtones, and culminating with this horrific incident, makes you wonder where the hell this story could possibly go.
What you have just witnessed could be the end of a particularly terrifying nightmare. It isn't. It's the beginning. Although Alan Talbot doesn't know it, he's about to enter a strange new world. Too incredible to be real, too real to be a dream. It's called the Twilight Zone.
Interestingly, when we next see Alan, he seemingly has no memory of the murder he just committed.
You ready?
And willing. You disappointed?
I'm a little surprised.
Alan visits his fiancée, Jessica Connolly, as played by Gale Kobe, and although he's only known her for 4 days, they've fallen in love and they're planning to get married. Alan has even taken Jessica to his hometown, Corville, to meet his Aunt Mildred.
You're desperately in need of a woman who's 5'3", who answers to the name of Jessica Connolly.
Initially, this whirlwind love affair felt very disconnected from the grisly opening scene. However, as the episode plays out, this storyline is interweaved surprisingly well with all of the oddities throughout, and it helps that Grizzard and Kobe have chemistry and work really well together. Both of these players had notable tenures in the spotlight. George Grizzard's acting career spanned 5 decades. He was a highly regarded theater performer, and he had numerous roles throughout the years on TV. He also appeared in films such as From the Terrace, Advise and Consent, and Flags of Our Fathers. Twilight Zone fans will also remember Grizzard from an earlier episode, The Chaser. Interestingly, there was a similar scene in both episodes where he was hamming it up with his romantic interest while on the other side of the door. In this episode, Grizzard is a far more compelling lead, and he's given way more time to shine.
Alan, do you think I'm going to like Corville?
Grizzard's co-star was no stranger to the Fifth Dimension either. Gale Kobe also appeared in A World of Difference and The Self-Improvement of Salvador Ross. and she too had many roles in TV over the years, appearing in shows such as The Alfred Hitchcock Hour, The Outer Limits, and Bright Promise. Moving along on their way to Corville, Alan once again hears the strange sounds while dreaming.
Walter.
I love moments like this. We're given little clues, and you can either allow the story to unfold or try to piece the puzzle together along the way, which is what I tend to do.
Who's Walter?
Who's who?
You kept saying Walter.
You got me.
Once the couple arrives in Corville, the mysteries pile up pretty fast. Although Alan has only been gone for a short time, he encounters inconsistencies which make no sense. Landmarks are different, people he knows apparently never existed or passed away, and even his place of employment seems to have vanished. But the most glaring oddity is when Alan arrives home and finds another man living in his house.
I'm Alan Talbot. So I happen to live here. Now, would you mind telling me who you are and what you're doing in my house?
Crazy or something?
In another memorable moment, Alan visits the location where his parents were buried. Here, he simply finds a tombstone with the names Walter and Mary Ryder. With all of these bizarre inconsistencies adding up, by this point, I felt about as confused as Alan himself.
I don't know what's going on.
On the way home, Alan once again begins hearing the strange sounds, and he pleads with Jessica to stop the car. Once outside, his homicidal urges kick back in, and he picks up a rock to kill Jessica. This scene works extremely well. The tension is through the roof. Considering what we saw in the opening, it feels very likely Alan is about to kill his bride-to-be. We even get a handheld camera shot, which takes us into creepy, unfamiliar territory for the Twilight Zone.
No!
Thankfully, Alan restrains himself and warns Jessica to get as far away from him as possible. After Jessica leaves, Alan wanders along the road and nearly gets hit by a car. Alan is wounded in the accident, and it's here that we get the reveal. He peels back his skin and discovers maybe he's not so human after all. Later, Jessica tries to convince Alan that he needs help, but we as viewers know he's going to need a little more than just a doctor. This is easily the most poignant moment for the couple.
Look, Jess, why don't you just forget about me? I don't know what's going on.
Jessica reaffirms that she still wants to stick with Alan, which is telling considering all the turmoil they've gone through.
I didn't plan on falling in love with you, but I did.
Soon after, Alan realizes the name Walter Ryder must be significant, and it's here that we get another huge reveal.
Hello, Alan.
It turns out Alan is a double of Walter.
I've been waiting for you.
Following the revelation that Alan is an android, we get an extended scene in which Walter explains how he created Alan and even gave him his own memories of Corville from 20 years ago.
You see, I was after real intelligence. Your brothers.
George Grizzard's double performance here is the highlight of the episode. To his credit, Grizzard plays these two distinct characters brilliantly. You barely notice this is one actor playing two roles.
So now you're telling me that I'm you? That's right. Oh, that's impossible. I'm me. This is my flesh. Non-conductive plastic.
Walter notes that he designed Alan to be a perfect version of himself, a theme which ties back to the episode title, In His Image, and its biblical significance.
Everything I wished I was, my creation would be. Where I was shy, he would be aggressive. Where I was cold and withdrawn, he would be warm and outgoing. Loneliness would be unknown to him.
Granted, this scene does go on for quite some time, but I actually loved every minute of it. The dialogue naturally answers most of our questions, and we even get yet another glimpse of the famous Forbidden Planet set, for those of you keeping count of those glowing Pac-Man lights. But at a deeper level, this scene also takes us into some thought-provoking territory. We grapple with the ethical complexities of man playing God, the potential consequences of artificial intelligence, and the profound trauma of Alan realizing he's not even human. We even get a passing reference to Jekyll and Hyde, although to me this scenario feels inspired more so by Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Mechanical Alan can almost be seen as a monster of sorts. He has killed before, and he continues to have murderous urges. Beyond all of these heavier ideas, we're still left with the fact that Walter has no clue how to fix Alan.
With you, something went wrong. To put it even clearer, Alan, you're insane.
And with that, Alan demands that Walter replace him with a functioning android to resume his relationship with Jessica. But when Alan recognizes the same pamphlet the subway preacher gave him earlier, once again he flips out. In the aftermath of the struggle, Alan, or is it Walter, returns to Jessica and assures her he's okay and he'll tell her what happened someday. As we close out, it's revealed that Alan did indeed lose the battle, so Walter will likely live out his life with Jessica.
In a way, it can be said that Walter Ryder succeeded in his life's ambition, even though the man he created was, after all, himself. There may be easier ways to self-improvement, but sometimes it happens that the shortest distance between 2 points is a crooked line through the Twilight Zone.
The password is manufacture.
10 points, George. See if you can get Joel to say it.
So, there we have it, in his image. Now, as you all know, I'm a big fan of sci-fi focused stories from the fifth dimension, and in that respect, this episode delivers on all fronts, especially in the later half. On that note, I wanted to mention this tale is eerily prophetic in some ways. First, we have the broader discussion of scientific innovation and the potential pitfalls of AI, a topic that's now more relevant and timely than ever. But there are also parallels with the writer of the story, Charles Beaumont. The lead in this tale struggles with faulty and unreliable memories.
Who am I? You're nobody, Alan. Nobody at all.
Alan's ordeal plays out as a nightmare of confusion. His identity and everything he knows to be true is questioned. Tragically, Charles Beaumont himself went on to suffer memory loss as a result of early onset Alzheimer's. As far as criticisms go, I do think the conclusion of In His Image has some minor issues. For starters, the final moment between Walter and Jessica feels rushed, especially in light of the fact that their relationship was a key aspect throughout the story. Also, I found myself questioning Walter simply taking Alan's place. I understand that it was his way of honoring the final wishes of his android counterpart, and he does mention that he'll tell Jessica the whole story one day, which may just send her fleeing for the hills, but all the same, it felt off. Perhaps the intended takeaway here is that going forward, Walter will aim to be his better self, a new and improved Alan Talbot. Plus, as noted in Rod Serling's closing narration, this was essentially Walter's bizarre path to self-improvement through the Twilight Zone.
We just had a rotten nightmare, that's all. Now we're awake and everything's gonna be fine. Will you try to believe that?
Do you?
Now, whether or not Walter deserves this seemingly happy ending, considering the damage his creation caused, is up for debate. It should be noted, In His Image was actually adapted from Charles Beaumont's original short story, The Man Who Made Himself. Some details here and there are different, including the names of the characters, but overall In His Image is pretty faithful to the source material. However, I think I might have preferred to see the ending as presented in the original story. In that version, Walter and Jessica head out to celebrate and have drinks together. During their outing, Walter intentionally burns his finger with a lighter. When Jessica asks why he did that, he explains that he had to prove he was flesh and blood, and not some part of a plastic nightmare. I feel like this final lingering doubt about his true identity could have been an interesting note to close out on. So, could this story have worked as a half-hour Twilight Zone? I doubt it, not without losing many of the interesting twists and turns. That said, according to Martin Grams Jr., prior to Season 1, Rod Serling had already expressed interest in Beaumont's short story, and he even wrote his own synopsis titled The Image. Serling's version, which was formatted as one of the shorter Twilight Zone entries, was heavily streamlined, removing Alan's murderous urges and focusing more so on him revisiting his hometown, finding inconsistencies, and ultimately discovering that he was a robot. Robot. Speaking of which, I think those of us who are fans of Blade Runner, Westworld, Star Trek, and pretty much any science fiction that explores artificial life will certainly enjoy the familiar themes explored in this story. In His Image is a strong start to the fourth season. Even though in the first viewing I may not have been able to wrap my head around everything going on, I still had fun taking guesses along the way, and it's another one of those episodes that I'd say worked better for me on repeat viewings. I'd rate In His Image 4 out of 5 Alan Talbots. Thanks as always for watching, everyone. I appreciate it. If you have your own thoughts on this episode, feel free to drop them in the comment section below. Also, if you enjoyed this review, hit that sub button, hit that like button, and hit that notification bell. Until next time, take care and be well. Later.
Wait!
Oh, boy. Produce.
Create.
9 points, Betty.
Make. Manufacture.
That's it.
That seems so simple. I've never used it.
If you said make on the first one, I don't think manufacture. Would you say manufacture? You don't know what you're saying now. You can't tell. I ask that question all the time, and it's a ridiculous question.